Hi friends and readers, my video for this week is going to be reading the lowest and highest rated books on my TBR shelves. I was scrolling through my Fable to see on my TBR which one was rated the lowest and which one so far has been rated the highest, and I came across two picks. The lowest on my TBR shelf, which is a virtual TBR shelf. I really don't buy books before I've read them because I don't have the space for it and also don't have the money for it. However, the lowest on that shelf is going to be a novel love story by Ashley Poston or a Poston. I would say Poston because my last name is P-O-S-T and I say Post, so I'm gonna say Ashley Poston. This will be our lowest pick for the week. I will say there was one book that was rated lower than a novel love story on my TBR, and that was The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. This is the only book left on my shelf over here besides A Good Girl's Guide to Murder that I haven't read. I am saving this one for the fall time. I bought it last year around Christmas because my local bookstore did not have it in stock for weeks because of how popular it was. And I know that people rate these lower because they're good fluffy filler books for the occasional season. So I decided I would not be reading this one for this video and instead would pick the second lowest technically book on my shelf. Then the highest rated book on my shelf is going to be The Nightingale by Kristin. This book by far was rated the highest on my shelf across all reading apps that I had. I did want to start out this week's video reading Ashley Poston's A Novel Love Story first, my lowest rated. However, this order of books is in the hands of my Libby app. I did purchase this copy, a hard copy of The Nightingale. I think it's closer to 600 pages, so I wanted a hard copy. I had been trying to wait for The Nightingale and A Novel Love Story on Libby, and The Nightingale is just months and months out. I had it on hold for a while now and it's not budging, but A Novel Love Story looks like it could deliver, and this week I am first in line on Libby, so I'm hoping that I can get the digital copy for that one and borrow it from the library instead of going out to buy it. And that brings me to the point that we will be starting with Kristin The Nightingale instead of our lowest rating book, just because that's how the cards played out this week. As an introduction to The Nightingale by Kristin, I am sure you have someone in your life who has read this book or mentioned this book, which is why it is so highly rated. It even says on the book that it's soon to be a major motion picture. This will be my first ever Kristin book, and I will say I'm a little nervous because I hear such rave reviews and emotional depth in these books. I'm not scared that it's going to live up to the hype per se. I just think that it's a bit intimidating. I haven't read about a 600-page book in quite some time, so this is why I'm starting this video today, which is a Saturday. Yesterday I had off work, so I got to do a lot of my weekend reset, which leaves me today and tomorrow to really start to tackle this book before work starts up again on Monday. It is about lunchtime. I'm gonna head over to a local coffee shop. It's a coffee cat cafe combined. Grab a coffee and see how many pages we can get into the book this afternoon. Wish me luck. Hello, it is now the next day. I started The Nightingale by Kristin. I made it to page 122 while I was at the coffee shop. I read in the coffee shop and then on the outside, and like I said before, it has little kitty cat cafe, so you get to see them in the windows, and I read by them in the windows. Even though I have my own kitties at home, it's still really fun to go and read outside of your house. So I got 122 pages into this book, and I immediately upon reading just understand why people rate this book so highly. I mean, I'm only probably a fifth of the way through the book and I'm really enjoying it, which is so surprising because this is so unlike books that I read. I'm a fluffy romance reader and this is the exact opposite. The Nightingale tells the stories of two sisters separated by years and experience, by ideals, passion, and circumstance, each embarking on her own dangerous path towards survival, love, and freedom in a German-occupied France. There's a bit of a past and present tense timeline going on here as we follow the two sisters, Isabel and Vianne. I mean, just 5 pages in, I could tell how emotionally taxing and how strong of a story this was going to be. We opened up the book with the perspective of one of the sisters, I believe. I don't even know, actually, when she is way into her life in her elderly age, and she is sort of reminiscing on her past with a box of mementos, and she said something to her son that I was reading it in the coffee shop and it sat with me, and I just thought, boy, we're only 5 pages in. I can't imagine what the rest of the 500 pages are going to be like. She said, "I always thought it was what I wanted, to be loved and admired. Now I think perhaps I'd like to be known. Think of this as my last request." You are just reading the heartbreaking reality of a world war, and it's a heavy book, but the writing is so well done. It just keeps you wanting to read more and more. It is Sunday. I have the next 2 hours to sit back and relax and read. We'll see how many pages we knock out for the rest of today. It is a little bit rainy outside, so it's the perfect weather to grab a coffee and get some reading done. Even the cover has a little bit of rain on it, so it'll be perfect to see what's next for Isabel and Vianne. I am on chapter 20 of The Nightingale by Kristin. It is Monday, about 12:32 p.m. I am on my lunch break today. Yesterday, I believe I read a little bit over roughly 160 pages yesterday, and I am now about halfway through this book. I anticipate I can finish it probably by tomorrow or Wednesday. That's the goal, at least. Since we last spoke, I'm still feeling the exact same way. This is wonderful writing. It really paints a picture and puts you in this historical time period during the war. I would dare to say that I am learning more about World War II and the role and portrayal of women in the war more from reading this book than I have ever in my public education. Every time I find myself reading a chapter and something heartbreakingly sad happens, I double down on the fact that this is based out of true, real context and perspective that genuinely happened in the World War, and it makes it that much more devastating to read. Through our two sisters, we're really getting to see how women are portrayed in the war and what role they had, and we're only uncovering that more, especially through our character Isabel. Often what men thought of women was that they should be staying home and waiting for the men to get home, and we see that with Vianne, but we're also uncovering that a wife and a mother staying at home waiting for her husband to come home from the war is not just as simple as that. They are caretakers and providers for the house, the family, the kids. It's just an important topic, and I wish I had read this sooner or started to read this sooner. We're gonna see how much more we can tackle of this today after I get off work at 5 o'clock. I'm just really glad that I chose to do this. I might not have ever picked up this book otherwise. It is Monday night, about 9:54 p.m. I just stopped on page 424 of The Nightingale, and I believe that there is only 564 pages. What is that math? I have about 140 pages left. Yeah, 104 pages left. I'll probably read another 40 pages tonight and then go to sleep. I don't think there's a scenario where I don't rate this book a 5-star. For a historical fiction, it is devastating, heartbreaking, emotion bending. I am not emotionally prepared for the rest of this book. I am a crier, and there are just so many hard topics in here as it pertains to World War II, the role of women, the soldiers, the Jews. It is just a hard read, but a very, very good read. So I will come back and update you probably tomorrow once I've finished this book. I don't know how I'm supposed to clock in for the rest of my shift after this. This is horrible. It's been a few hours since the last clip I showed you of my tears, and I have finished The Nightingale by Kristin, and it's a 5-star for sure. If I could rate it a 6-star, I certainly would. So a 6-star read for me, really. For someone who really doesn't enjoy historical fiction, this book blew me out of the water. The heartbreak, the survival, the love, the loss. It was very devastating, but also beautiful at the same time. I cried so much. I've never cried at a book as much as I have for this book. I will forever think about Isabel and Vianne's stories and perspectives, their strength, their sacrifice. Sometimes when I hear people say that they're just gonna be thinking about a book forever, I don't always get it, but I get it with this book. I will say, if you're thinking about picking up this book, definitely go in prepared. There are some really heavy and triggering topics in this book, so if you're going to pick it up, I'd make sure you're in a good headspace. But I totally understand why it was the highest rated book on my TBR. It has a 4.67 star rating on Fable with over 103,000 reviews. I think I'm going to take the rest of the night to just sit on The Nightingale and not start the next book until tomorrow. The next book is going to be a massive pivot for me, and this will be the lowest rated book on my TBR, and that is a novel love story by Ashley Poston. On Fable, a novel love story has a 3.72 star rating out of 23,000 reviews. For Ashley Poston, I actually did read The 7-Year Slip, I think just about a year and a half ago. It was one of those pivotal books for me that kept me reading consistently last year, and I rated it a 5-star. I did not read any other books from Ashley Poston. I didn't always hear the greatest things about dead romantics or a novel love story, and I think she just recently released a music-related romance book, actually based in North Carolina, but I haven't read that either. I think the cover is adorable, and I've heard a little bit about the premise of this book, so I am excited. It is going to be a jarring shift from what I just read though, so I'm going to keep that in mind. Try not to do any comparison doing the lowest and the highest rated when they're on two separate spectrums of genres and just ideas. One thing I do know about Ashley Poston is that she writes a lot of magical realism into her romance books, like The 7-Year Slip, which I totally love. In other books, it's hard for me to wrap my head around it without thinking so many reasons why that wouldn't work, or trying to think about the logical part of magical realism, which it's not. I will come back to you tomorrow once I dive into that and get a little bit of the ways into the synopsis. My last note for the night, go pick this up, please. I am winding down for bed. It is the next day since I last spoke to you and finished up The Nightingale. It's about 10 p.m. and so I am about to head to sleep in the next hour or so. I did end up starting a novel love story by Ashley Poston today, and I finished about 96 pages. So I think it was about 27%. Luckily, my Libby app did come through. The book was delivered about a day ago. I had it on hold for a few weeks now, so it was perfect timing, which means I am reading it on my Kindle. I love reading on my Kindle. Thoughts so far. A novel love story is about a character named Elsie. Funnily enough, Elsie is a big book girl. She's a book girly. She loves books. She uses books to escape from her everyday life. Elsie has an online book gang where they get on video chat and they talk about books, and they make a trip each year to, I believe, New York to do a big in-person cabin week where they do nothing but read and drink wine. I love the idea and the premise of this. It's always so fun to read about a book girly. When you are a book girly, you can just see all the little memos and the cute little references. They've brought up Emily Henry already, who is my favorite author. This is a very small town cozy book. On her way to her big book week in New York, I think it's about a 16-hour drive. She's going alone this year. Her best friend couldn't make it. She gets lost in a town. Cue Ashley Poston's magical realism. She goes through a thunderstorm, loses service, and she ends up in a town where slowly but surely she starts to discover that this is the town from her favorite romance book. She meets a person in the town and she doesn't know if he was from the romance book or not, but everyone else in the town, she starts to pick out, oh right, I've read about you, you're one of my favorite characters ever. What I'll say is, if I were her, I would have had no clue I was in my favorite romance novel. I could love a book front to back, adore it, give it a 5 or 6 stars, and not be able to know what those characters look like in real life because I've completely made up a thought, a blurb, a blob of a human in my head, and I would never guess that that's what they actually look like in real life. So when she started to pick out that these are characters from her favorite novel, I was like, great concept, could never be me. There are so many references for her being a book girly to books. They mentioned Stars Hollow, which Gilmore Girls stan right here, biggest fan of Gilmore Girls. So this whole time I'm reading, I'm definitely picturing a small town, very quaint, everyone knows everyone. One thing funny I thought I would mention is her name is Elsie, which is I think short for Eileen. So they brought up back that she was named after a song, Come On Eileen. In my head I said, I've heard of this in a romance book recently where they kept saying the song Come On Eileen. Drop down in the comments if you immediately know what I'm talking about. It was mentioned in, I believe, Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. This book did come out before then, so I guess it came out in this book first, but I thought, man, if I had a nickel for every time a romance character, a female main character in a romance novel mentions the song Come On Eileen, I'd have 2 nickels. So it didn't happen a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. As I continue reading the book, I'm going to try to frame it that this is a magical realism book. Everything is not going to be logical. Everything will not have an explanation. I have to decide whether or not that allows me to enjoy this book or if I can't enjoy this book. I'm going to try to read a few more chapters tonight. I shall continue on with the novel love story and catch back up with you tomorrow once we've got a little bit more into the book to really see how I'm feeling about it. Good night. In my head, I'm thinking I didn't even finish explaining what I was talking about with the book. Our main character, Elsie, stumbles upon this town, realizes that these are the characters from her main romance novel, and she doesn't want to leave. Girl. What? Okay, I'm popping in for a very quick update. I am on page 278, which is about 77% of a novel love story. It's about 6:45 p.m. I'm sitting in my office reading up some chapters. I think I'll end up finishing this page tonight. I have about an hour left of reading, so I think I'll wrap it up tomorrow. The magical realism is a little bit different in this book than it was in A 7-Year Slip. If you read A 7-Year Slip, the magical realism is around the apartment, so a tangible item, I would say, versus in this book, the magical realism has to do with the people and the town. So it's so much harder for me to wrap my head around. I will say I am flying through the book, but that's because I want to know how it's going to be explained that she just walked into her romance novel in real life. And so I'm dying to get to the end of the book because I want to know how this ends. I do think that there's a profound message in here. The author of the romance novels that our main character loves and has found herself in passed away in the middle of one of the stories, or one of the last stories being written. And so you're left wondering what happens to that storyline and those most people, even though they're fictional, but in our main character, kind of real right now. People are right where you leave them. Taylor Swift reference. Also, on a more happier note, our female main character Elsie and the male main character, where we're getting this tension and budding relationship, it is just crazy to me because she thinks that he's a fictional character. So I literally don't know how that would work out. She doesn't know either. So it's really hard. It's really hard. It's really hard. Anyways, I do not know where I'm gonna land with this book, even though I'm flying through it. We'll see, and I'll update you soon. It is the next day. We are finally at Friday, finishing up my work week. I'm on my lunch break. I finished A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston last night, and I rated it a 3-star. I gave it a 3-star. Let's talk about why I gave it a 3-star and wrap up this week's video. I think that I'm slowly realizing magical realism may not be a 5-star read for me, and that is totally okay. I would still recommend this book, especially to the book community. It is such a fun read if you are into reading, you like to talk about reading. Ashley Poston did such a good job of weaving in what it's like to be in the book community, to have book friends, to binge books. Just anything it means to be a reader is built into this book, and that is such a fun aspect. For me, usually the ending of a book is where I lose some star ratings, and at first, as I was finishing up the last 100 pages of the book, I thought, oh my goodness, this is refreshing. I love the way this is heading. And then I was let down just a little. I don't want to say why because that would sort of be a spoiler, but if you read it, I think you would understand what I'm talking about. I also think that this book did such a good job of portraying grief. And I mentioned in a previous clip, Right Where You Left Me by Taylor Swift on repeat in my head as I ended the book. The ideal behind the female main character's favorite author and how that's incorporated into her stumbling upon the romance novel town was just beautiful for grief and trying to write through grief. There was a quote that said, because even after people were gone, there were still stories. There were always stories, which is why I gave this book a 3-star. If you know anything about me, I am a cat person, and there's a cat in this book, which I absolutely adore. His or her name was Butterscotch. Absolutely love. They didn't leave me with any questions as it revolves around butter, so I was happy about that. I do think I could still pick up another Ashley Poston book. I know she recently came out with another one that I mentioned earlier in the video. Might pick that up as well. If you like magical realism, if you like books, definitely grab this book. In honor of the magical realism, if you made it to this part of the video, comment a wand. And that is the end of reading my lowest and highest rated book on my TBR. If you think I should do this again, let me know, because now I have a different lowest rated and a different highest rated on my TBR. And that'll also change throughout the year as I add or take books off my TBR. But I think that this was such a fun experiment. I definitely want to do it again. I probably never would have picked up the Nightingale, and that's, I almost guarantee, gonna be the favorite book of the year that I read. And I still really enjoyed the lowest rating, and it was not like a bad book or the worst book. It was just averagely rated, lower than the other books I have on my TBR. Still a pretty high rating. I'm gonna go enjoy the weekend and a nice little sunny Friday before the rain takes over for the rest of the week. Bye for now.